Okay, so you've identified your responsible party and you've reviewed the regulations. The next step is to write a written hazard communication program. The written hazard communication program, the purpose of it is just a policy document that you use to inform your employees how you'll be communicating the hazards of the chemicals in the workplace. Nothing more. It doesn't need to be long, it doesn't need to be complicated. If it sounds like it's written by lawyers or it's written for lawyers, it's probably not really the most effective program. The first step to writing a hazard communication program is you have to take a chemical inventory. Now, a chemical inventory is simply a record of all the chemicals that you have on site. When you're writing down the chemical inventory, you need to make sure that you write down the product identifier on the label. The product identifier on the label must be on the label, and it also must match the product identifier on the safety data sheet so that in the future when employees are trying to cross-reference the two, they'll all match. When you're doing a chemical inventory, this is a great time to do some housekeeping. Take a look at the chemicals, pick them up off the shelf. There's a little brown ring around the bottom of the can. It probably means it hasn't been moved in a couple of years. And if it hasn't been moved in a couple of years, it hasn't been used in a couple of years. So get rid of it, right? You don't need to have it around. The more chemicals you have on site, the more hazards you have on site, the more things that it can burn, the more labeling requirements you have, the more safety data sheet requirements you have. Just makes things easier to make sure that the chemicals that are on site are required for work and not just there taking up space. Another thing I highly recommend while you're doing the chemical inventory is to make note of the hazard warnings that exist on the current label on the chemicals. Does it have pictograms? Does it have a hazard statement, a precautionary statement, maybe first aid? Whatever's on there, make a quick note of it, and it'll turn out to be really useful in the next step when it comes to chemical labeling. So take a walk around and look at all those chemicals and make sure you get a good and accurate chemical inventory. All right, so you've completed your chemical inventory. Now it's time to move on to the written hazard communication program. We've got some great options right here on the site. There is a free hazard communication template you can download. There's one in the OSHA Hazard Communication Small Entity Compliance Guide that I mentioned. There's also one included in the Affordable Safety Training Hazard Communication DVD Compliance Kit that I recommended. So lots of great options. But remember, this is a policy document for your employees. It doesn't need to be long. You don't need to restate all the regulations from OSHA. Just keep it simple. The written hazard communication program needs the chemical inventory, the chemical labeling methods, the location of the safety data sheets, the methods for informing and training employees of chemical hazards, how employees are informed of hazardous non-routine tasks, and how employees are informed of the chemicals in unlabeled pipes. That's it. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. Now, if you're on a site with multiple employers, one additional requirement is that you need to mention how you will be communicating and coordinating the hazard communication programs between the different employers. We've actually got a great option for a hazard communication program. Instead of just keeping it away in a file folder somewhere, you can put it right up there on the wall. We've got a great hazard communication program poster that meets OSHA requirements. Just post it on the wall, fill it out with a Sharpie, and have all your employees sign it, and you've got a great awareness tool, and you've got a safety plan that's right there and visible for everybody.